Who will dominate the NFL Combine this week? We'll break it down on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCool's BCB. And we've got a special guest for you guys today. It is Damian Parson. Follow him on Twitter at DP_NFL. Check him out on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast as well. Damian, how you doing today, sir?
I am good, man. It's Combine week, so it's always a good time, fun time to get the ball rolling on the 40 time, the verticals, everything that we're going to see down in Indianapolis.
Damian, let's start with some of the guys that we expect to test really well. Who are some of the big name guys that you expect to blow up the combine?
I go right to Texas and their wide receiver Isaiah Bond. Guy has explosive, dynamic speed vertically, changes direction very well. And I think the 3-cone will be good for him, but I'm expecting him to blaze that 40. And he's going to be, in my opinion, he's going to be one of those guys that's going to threaten for the 40-yard champion title when it's all said and done. When he gets the ball in his hands, when he gets into space, he beats angles with ease. It's all over his tape. And I think this is a young man who's going to really help himself battle some injuries this year. So I think the combine, get, of course, medical clearance, green light, and everything like that. Make sure there's nothing lingering for long-term issues. But I think after that, he hits the track, and that fast track, that speed track that's in Indianapolis for the Colts Stadium. I think that Isaiah Bond's going to be a guy that's going to light it up.
I think real quick, I think it was A.D. Mitchell, his teammate, or not teammate, but a former Texas receiver, ran like a 4.35. Does he beat that time?
I think so. Yeah. Because it's crazy enough. I remember when I watched that time come across the screen, I was like, I didn't see that on film. Like 4.35 that would kind of caught me off guard. Yeah. I absolutely think Isaiah Bond hits low 4.3s, maybe high 4.2s. I think he has that type of speed.
All right. I mean, everyone likes to watch the little guys run. Yeah, they're fast. Big deal. Let's talk about some big guys that are going to impress. Who are some guys over 300 pounds that you think are going to blow us away with their athleticism, offensive or defensive?
Well, of course, I think, some people might say it's low-hanging fruit, but you go to Michigan's defensive tackle, Kenneth Grant. Like when you turn on the tape and watch the game against Penn State in 2023, there's that the infamous run where he's in the middle of the wash on the offense at the line of scrimmage, and he runs down Katron Allen down the left sideline. Yeah. And it reminded me so much of Jordan Davis all over again, just watching him move at 340 pounds. This is a legitimate athlete at that size. He's got good get off. And again, he has the long speed and the want to chase plays down from backside. So he's talking about those 300 plus guys. I absolutely think that he's going to just test out of this world in terms of the 40 time. The 10-yard split should be good as well. I think he's going to light it up. You look at, he's kind of teetering on Shamar Stewart's like 290. Yeah. I think he can easily carry.
He's going to light it so much that we'll give him the extra 10 pounds, right?
Exactly. I think he can carry 300 for sure, and I think he's going to light it up as well. Being down in Mobile and seeing him up close and personal, and just watching him move, he just moved differently on film and in person than most guys that are built his size. He's built like a traditional strong side defensive end, but he moves like a 3-4 outside linebacker, and it's like, man, if you can then get some of the technical stuff down, pack things like that, you feel really good about what you're going to get from him. So, of course, that's one of my guys as well.
Damian, can I ask you real quick? Two of the guys that I can't figure out, and I know Landon's been having some of the same issues, are Mykal Williams and Shamar Stewart. Mm-hmm. Of those two, I know Stewart's probably 15 pounds heavier, but which of those two do you expect to test better in Indianapolis?
Ooh, that's a good one because I think both of them should test well. I'm going to go with Stewart.
Okay.
I think Stewart is I think he's the more explosive athlete, whereas I look at Michael's more of the length and the stride, whereas like he could still test well, but that juice and explosiveness may not be the same in the 10-yard split and things of that nature. And what these guys are going to have to, more than anything, they're going to have to do is that hoop drill, the figure 8 drill. When they get to that drill, you have to run the circle, grab the beanbag, finish it off, drop it, go to the other circle, showcase that if you can dip your hips, the ankle flexion, hip fluidity, the things that they're going to be looking for. Because when you're 6'6", 6'7", 6'5", 270, 290, you kind of have to show that, hey, I can bend that corner. I'm just not speed to power and all physical tools. I can actually get in corner to the quarterback.
Damian, I want to ask you about, I am a massive fan of Tyler Warren from Penn State. I know Landon has some questions about him a little bit. That's not true. Landon loves him. We all expect him to test well, but I think depending on how well he tests could determine how high he goes. So what type of numbers are you expecting from Tyler Warren? Is he going to run like 4.65, or could we see faster than that?
I think he's running at 4.65, 4.6 flat. I think he's somewhere in there. And I think for him, if he hits that, I think he's gonna be fine. The straight line speed is there. I think the main thing you want to see from him is that 10-yard split. What does your immediate burst off the ball look like? Granted, he's never gonna be in that stance. That's why I always tell people just be careful how you value the 4D time, because they're in the track stance. Yeah, only the people who are in the track stance in the NFL are defensive linemen, like the edge rushers, right? Like, so I think for him, it's going to just go out there and cement yourself. That's the big. I think we talked about that on the podcast on Friday. He has to cement himself, because when you do look at the difference between him and like a Colston Loveland is like that Jimmy Graham big body receiver, Travis Kelce's that has the vertical speed that can easily take off the ball. And if Loveland tests 4.5, and then Tyler Warren comes in and tests 4.65, there are going to be some people that's going to, okay, I got to go back to the tape, see what's going on. But I think with Tyler Warren, 4.6, if he can get to 4.6, he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, there's certainly different players, that's for sure. And I think that they're going to test like that, right? Their body types are very different. Let's talk about a couple more guys that, like, I think probably are going to test well and actually kind of need to test well, because that's kind of what they're banking on. Have you watched Charles Grant from William & Mary yet?
Yes.
Yeah, he's another guy. How do you think he's going to test? Because to me, I mean, I think when I watch him, I'm like, hey, the only reason I'm watching this guy from William & Mary with this ridiculous tape is because this guy is an incredible athlete. How do you expect someone like him to test?
I think he's going to test well. He moves so quick and fluid. The lateral movement ability and agility is there. He gets off the ball quickly, and you love to see that type of stuff. And it's crazy, because with offensive linemen, it's always so tricky, because I remember watching Olu Fashanu coming into for the last 2 years, before he, from 2022 and 2023. And it was like everybody you talked to felt the same way. Scouts, O-line guys, he's a freak athlete. Then you get to the combine, and it's like the 40 time and stuff was like, whatever. Like he didn't test like a Jordan Davis at 4.7 there. Like he didn't go just all scorch the earth or anything. So like I would after kind of like paying attention, I'm like, all right, maybe some of these guys are just more athletic within playing the game rather than like full testing. But I think he's going to test well. Like this dude moves well. He's got all the physical like movement skills that you want. And I mean, his tape's good too. So I think it's just an opportunity to just stamp yourself, just check off that extra box for these NFL scouts, so they know, hey, the tape matches my testing, everything like that. Continue to climb up these boards.
All right, let's talk about some players that we think need to have big combines this week in Indianapolis. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you just want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. There's a couple times where I'll miss the opening tip-off, but don't have to worry. You can still bet on any NBA game at any point. Plus, the app is so easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets, and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are here with Damian Parson discussing the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. And Damian, give us some players that you think need to have big combines for their draft stock.
Man, I go right to the wide receiver position out of TCU, Savion Williams, 6'4", 220, 225. He was on Bruce Feldman's freak list. Yep. And when you watch him, he leaps out of the gym. He's got that big body and catch radius, but it's the speed, the burst, the acceleration. And I think for him, and I don't want to say it in this way, but kind of you have to separate yourself from Quentin Johnston. Yep. You have to. It's the helmet scouting. You went to the same school, you were on the same offense, the same team at the same time, and Quentin has had drops. Savion has had drops throughout his career at TCU. He's not the most natural hand catcher. So the gauntlet drill is going to be big for him. But I think the 40 time, the broad jump, and the vertical, this is where you really like put yourself in a different stratosphere in the wide receiver class where it's more so top heavy with like a Mecca Ibuka, Luther Burden, my guy out of Texas, Matthew Golden. Me and Keith talk about him all the time. And of course, Tator McMillan. There's space and opportunity to get into that top 4, top 5, top 6 wide receivers and stamp yourself as a potential top of the second round pick. Savion Williams, this is a big time opportunity for him. He needs to have a big combine.
Yeah, especially a guy like that. I mean, that's funny that you mentioned him first because he was one of the first names that came to my mind just because his game is based almost exclusively on athleticism, right? Like it's not like a skill-based situation where he's a guy that you're trying to get the ball to and have him run through folks. And if he's going to do that, he has to generate X amount of force. And obviously that's going to need, 220 plus and we're going to need to see some 4, 5 or maybe lower. Right. Let's talk about a couple other guys. Cause I do think that, there are guys that it feels like that need to check boxes. And again, I think I go to the offensive line area. Who are we like specifically watching for arm length? That I think are kind of guys that that's their combine. There's always a class of guys that come into the combine where, oh yeah, the athletic testing matters, but it's more like, oh, this is an offensive tackle, and if he doesn't hit 33 inches on the arm length, guess what? You're playing guard, buddy. Give me some names here who are in that kind of watch list.
Of course, Will Campbell. Like that's the first guy that you think about because for him, it like his tape is good. He's physical. He's strong. I think athletically, he's functional. I don't think he is the most explosive guy off the ball. But at the same time, if you rewind last year, no one saw Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State and J.C. Latham out of Alabama being left tackles, nonetheless tackles coming out of college. So I think with Will Campbell, he absolutely has a path to play tackle. The arm length is going to be big because certain teams have thresholds. You know what I mean? With the Indianapolis Colts, they're a big RAS team. So if you don't have the green on that cue card that says your RAS is good, you're probably not getting drafted by the Colts. It's just how certain teams operate. And with Will Campbell, he projects to be a top 15 pick, but that getting as close to 33 plus is going to be major for him. Coming in at 32 and a quarter, that's going to make it difficult because now you're limiting the amount of teams that are going to be okay selecting you early in the draft. So I think that's going to be a big time thing for him overall. Just continue to look at this class. Personally, I mean, I think for me, you're talking about guys that have to measure in well. I think it's going to be weird because I think it's going to be Jonas Avenea and then Josh Simmons. Jonas Avenea from Arizona, Josh Simmons from Ohio State. Of course, Simmons, his combine is going to be more medical checks than anything coming off of that leg injury that he suffered against Oregon. But I think checking the arm length and getting a verified number that shows that he's past the threshold, because when he's healthy, as good as Will Campbell is, the way it was trending, Josh Simmons was probably going to end up as most people's OT1 in this class.
Yeah.
His athleticism, burst, the footwork, the quickness, the ability to live on an island. I remember talking to my guy Brandon Thorne while we were in Mobile, and it's like, yeah, tackle is one of the only positions outside of corner that you're asked to live on the island against a better athlete that is charging a full head of steam in your direction, and you're retreating. And it's the truth. So I think just looking at Josh Simmons, the medical checks, and then, of course, the arm length is going to be big for him. And then not just Josh Simmons, but like I said, Jonas Avenea, which is when I watch him, I see parallels to J.C. Latham. Big, boxy frame, super physical, heavy-handed guys that I think can be functional at tackle athletically. And that's going to be a big thing for him, is showcasing that he can get off the ball quickly, but then the arm length, because a lot of people do view Jonah as a guard right now. And it's like, well, if you come in and you measuring at 33.5, 34s on the arm, some offensive line coaches, we've been doing this long enough, we know coaches in the NFL always believe I can coach a guy out of his problems. So it's like, if he comes in with good super long arms, or a really good arm length, some offensive line coach might say, listen, I think he can play right tackle for us because of that run game situation, especially if you already have the other 4 guys solidified on your own line.
Damian, Jonah's the guy, real quick. Jonah was the guy that the Cowboys fans should keep in mind for potential guard replacement. I think, he's the guy middle round, really big and strong. So definitely, if you haven't watched him yet, Cowboys fans, check him out.
Damian, I want to ask you about Luther Burden, who is one of my favorite players in this class. But to me, he is somebody that I do think needs to have a really good combine, because production was down in 2024. Not necessarily his fault, but it was down. He's somebody, like, if he runs in the 4.39 range, like a lot of people are projecting, we're talking about somebody that's going to be a top 12 pick. But if it's more in the 4.51, 4.53 range, then I do wonder if a fall is coming on draft day.
Yeah, I think, like you said, this is a big opportunity for him, and to just extrapolate himself from that offense. Missouri's offense took such a step back in 2024. From QB play, the play call, everything just looked disconjointed, and it hurt his on-field play. Coming into the season, they were sending out signals to people, hey, we're going to play him more on the outside. Well, we got through the season, he played predominantly in the slot yet again, and the question has to be, is that more an indictment on him, or does him being in the slot make it easier for your quarterback to get him the football? And I think it's probably the latter. So for him to go out here, test well, because he is explosive. I put that in my report over at Bleacher Report. He's dynamic, especially after the catch. This guy's changing direction. He's super sudden. If he could hit, I would say, honestly, that 4.41 at worst, 4.39, like if he hits that range, I think people are going to go back, check the tape, blame the OC and everybody else at Missouri and say, you know what, I'm still drafting him top 15 because he is a big-time playmaker. And, I think what also hurt him a little bit was that people started comparing them to Malik Neighbors coming into the summer after Neighbors got drafted. And I'm like, Neighbors was a different animal, you know what I mean, in terms of speed, strength, explosiveness. That was just a different package overall. But I still like Luther Burden. I think that he has a strong chance to be a top 15 player. And I think he's going to test well. I think he should test well.
Yeah.
All right. I got two more guys that I think are on their way to kind of finishing the triple crown of the offseason, right? Like, they had a really great tape despite being from smaller schools. They both came in and had really good Senior Bowls. And I want to talk about what you think the expectation are for Darius Alexander from Toledo and Mike Green from Marshall. These are two guys who I think are really opened a bunch of eyes. I think even more so specifically for Darius Alexander. Mike Green, there have been whispers about Darius Alexander blew the Senior Bowl up, really opened some eyes. He's an older prospect, which means Marcus doesn't want to draft him. But what do you think about what they're going to do in the combine? Do you think that they can kind of solidify themselves in their draft position?
100%. I think, especially for, of course, getting re-evaluated from a measurement standpoint, as shout out to Jim Nagy in the Senior Bowl, but we've seen it before where guys come in, measure one way, then they get to the combine, it's like the measurements are a little bit off, whether good or bad. So then coming in, confirming, hey, this is my arm length, this is my height, I'm 6'3", 305, whatever the case may be, test well. But of course, like especially for a guy like Darius, the bench press, showcasing how like that functional weight room strength. What do you have, especially if you have the long arms? It's not when you have longer arms coming from somebody who benches a good bit. When your arms are long, you're at a disadvantage compared to a guy like me with shorter arms. I don't have that much height to get the bar up. So I think for him, it's just being able to knock those things out, interview well, stuff like that, get on the field and showcase all the things he showcased at the Senior Bowl, right? And with Mike Green, of course, like you said, the whispers, handling that stuff, the interviews, the things that we won't be privy to until stuff starts to leak out. But then go test well in the 40, right? Show that 10-yard split for defensive linemen and edge rushers is so important because it shows us your get off. Because when you have that type of get off, as we saw at the Senior Bowl, and guys want to jump set you, and you can change gears quickly and go from speed to power, as we saw versus Josh Connolly in that viral rep, that puts guys on notice. So now tackles are trying to like jump the snap. They want to get out on you early, and what they do is they get depth, and they get too much depth sometimes because they're overcompensating. Now as an edge rusher, because they overcompensate, now I have two lanes to work with. You don't have that bumper on the interior because you're all the way out here with me, and I can cut cross face and get back, and that's a quicker path to the quarterback anyway. He needs to showcase that ability, and also figure eight drill is going to be big for him too. He's built similar to Byron Young to me that's with the Rams that came out of Tennessee, those stocky, strong builds. But, okay, let's see exactly how much bend and ankle flexion you're going to have in these drills on the field. I think these guys can absolutely, like you said, triple crown. You do this, I don't even think I need to see you at your pro day. No. Just hone it in, go out there, kiss babies, wave hands, take pictures, and just call it a day.
All right, let's talk about some of Damian's favorite options for the Cowboys at pick number 12. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with, Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every single day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's talk about the Cowboys because this is Locked On Cowboys. Damian, who are some of your favorite options for the Cowboys in round one at pick number 12?
I think I tweeted about him, and Landon was in conjunction with me. Walter Nolan. I know that I think it's Osa supposed to be a free agent playing that 3-tech spot. And if you Jerry Jones is Jerry Jones when it comes down to the paycheck in the checkbook. So if he decides not to pay Osa, and you get into the draft and you have a hole at that 3-tech, I think you run that card up. Walter Nolan's at the board on 12 on the board at the 12th pick. This is a guy, he said at the Senior Bowl. And when you watch the tape, you see him play 0. He plays 1. He played 2-eye. They slant him heavily to exchange gaps. He said at the Senior Bowl, I am a 3-tech, 4-eye type of defensive lineman. And you put him in that position where because it's a natural development that still has to take place with him because he's so used to slanting and just being kind of not a crash test dummy, but just a wrecking ball on the interior offensive line, where he's just blowing up shop and creating rush lanes for linebackers like Chris Paul or for Jared Ivey to loop around and different things like that, and make it Princely Umami Ellen's job a lot easier, right? I think putting him in the 3-tech spot where he can be a single gap penetrator, you get to then work on not just the team, but he gets to work on in the offseason after being drafted on his hand usage on how to just deconstruct those blocks, because he's heavily doubled in that Ole Miss defensive line. So I think he is there. I know a lot of Dallas fans I've talked to and I've had interactions with, they love Ashton Genty at 12.
Come back, Marcus. Come back to the show, back. Marcus. Okay. Marcus, come back. We have to finish this show.
I had a feeling we were going to get this type of reaction from my guy, Marcus. But
okay, go ahead.
I'm not subscribing to that message of taking Genty at 12.
There you go. Thank you.
This running back class, this is one of the best running back classes I think I've ever scouted, and not just from top end talent to mid day 2 talent, but there's going to be guys, I personally believe, teams that don't value running backs, like Marcus Marshalls of the world, like you're going to be able to get you a starter potentially after the draft. Like, I
Well,
think guys are going to go undrafted.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the combine's so important this week, because to me, that next group of running backs after Ashton Genty, he's the best running back in this class, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson, I want to see how those guys test athletically compared to one another. We know that running backs, like the testing numbers generally don't matter too much. But if you're comparing apples to apples, like I want to see someone like Travion Henderson, whose game is based on athleticism, test it really well at the combine. So that is one of the positions that I'm really looking forward to watching this week.
No, like, because there's a cluster with this running back group. And outside of my top three is Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton at 2, and I have Caleb Johnson at 3. I love Caleb Johnson. I actually my comp for him is a former Dallas Cowboy, DeMarco Murray.
Yeah.
That's my comp for Caleb Johnson. I love what Caleb Johnson brings just as the full and total package. So after the top 3 to 4, there's just a cluster of guys. There's a lot of RB2s in this class as well. Those change of pace guys, satellite backs. Then you have just kind of the first and second down just powerhouses like Ollie Gordon and different things like that that you can get on day 3, in my opinion. But yeah, to your point, Marcus, the testing, the combine is going to really break this cluster up overall. I think honestly, and we talked about him just a minute ago. Let's say Will Campbell, since you lost Zach Martin, let's say Will Campbell's arm length comes in at guard range and he falls to 12. I'm making that pick there. You know what I mean? Because when you look at what you guys just did last year, Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe, and of course you would rather try and find a veteran to mesh and kind of congeal everything together with these young guys on the offensive line. But if you have to go offensive lineman at 12 to make sure a returning Dak Prescott feels comfortable stepping up in the pocket, if Will Campbell's arms come in shorter and teams are like, I don't know, and he starts slipping, he falls to 12, I would make that pick and throw him right in at that guard spot and allow him to open up, because you're going to draft the running back on day 2, somewhere on day 2, and you're going to be able to run the ball with that offensive line of Cooper Beebe, Will Campbell, Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith. Like, you're going to move people off the ball. Philly, it's going to be a war in the trenches each game that you see each other. Same thing with Washington and also with the Giants with Big Dexter Lawrence and those pass rushers they have. So I would absolutely, that's why I say I'm not subscribing to the Ashton Genty thing, because again, especially once I saw that move with Zach Martin, I'm like, okay, so we're going to draft, if we draft Ashton Genty at 12, we're going to be missing one of the best guards of all time that played the game. Like, that's going to negatively impact his ability to be efficient, where I can go ahead and fill out my team a little bit more. 3rd round, grab me a running back that could be a bell cow.
And that's why we have Damian on the show for takes like that. Thank you so much. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Dave, that's all we got for the show. We're just going to end on that note. How can you end on anything better than that? It's perfect. Go follow Damian on Twitter at @DP_NFL. Make sure you check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Go check out the Locked On Cowboys podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.